scientists installed a camera in Michael's coffin for research purposes. When they watched the video, they were shocked. Michael came from a wealthy family. His father was a real estate businessman who also enjoyed collecting ancient artifacts that fetched a lot of money on the black market. His mother was one of the best surgeons in the country. Even though Michael had everything he needed, he was a modest child. When Michael turned 18, his mother died of cancer, leaving him and his father alone. A few years later, his father married a beautiful woman who had a daughter, Sarah, from a previous marriage. After the wedding, Michael decided to follow in his father's footsteps and pursue a career in real estate and artifact collection. He quickly achieved success in these endeavors, demonstrating the business skills he inherited from his father. Unfortunately, Michael's father passed away after a short illness, leaving the young man lonely, unhappy, and lost. Luckily, he had his stepsister and stepmother by his side. For a time, Michael was skeptical about trusting them, but on many occasions, they demonstrated their love by sacrificing their time and resources to keep him happy and comfortable. In the end, he let them into his heart, and it seemed like one of the best decisions of his life. 6 months after his father's death, Michael returned to his parents' home, which he has inherited. He felt empty and guilty about living in another city while his parents' house remained empty. That's why he decided to return home. In just a few months, the city underwent significant changes thanks to Michael. Schools and roads were repaired, and a small hospital was built. Michael also donated to less fortunate communities and provided scholarships to many children. Everyone was happy for the young man and blessed him daily. This continued until one morning, when the residents woke up to the shocking news that Michael was dead. His half-sister, Sarah, came to visit him and found his lifeless body lying on the floor. Even though she suspected he was dead, she immediately took him to the hospital in the hope that her intuition was wrong. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Doctors confirmed that Michael was indeed dead. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to determine the cause of his death. They explained the situation to Sarah and suggested an autopsy to get a definitive answer. At the last moment, Sarah remembered that her brother had mild heart problems. She provided medical records showing Michael's diagnosis and explained that, although he was taking medication, his illness might have contributed to his death. She felt there was no need for an autopsy. Besides, Sarah knew that her brother had always been against autopsies, believing they violated the principle of human dignity. Determined to honor his beliefs, she refused the procedure. Before leaving the hospital, Sarah arranged for her brother's body to be kept in the morgue until she could organize his funeral. All night long, Sarah was restless. She wanted to honor her brother's memory one last time, so she went online to search for ways to do so. That's when she came across an article about scientists studying the bodies of the deceased. They observed them for a year before drawing conclusions. Knowing her brother had a passion for making a difference in the world, Sarah decided this was the perfect way to honor him. That evening, Sarah contacted the scientists and informed them they could use her brother for their research. She signed the necessary documents and promised to donate the compensation to a local orphanage. Early the next morning, Sarah organized a funeral for her brother. The church was overcrowded, a testament to how much people loved Michael. Before placing the body in the coffin, the scientists attached a camera inside. This camera would record and transmit footage directly to their computers for a year until the batteries ran out. They set the recording time to 7 p.m. daily. The funeral service was solemn and lasted about an hour. By the end of the ceremony, everyone's eyes were puffy from crying. After the funeral, Sarah left for another city, hoping to take her mind off her brother's death. Meanwhile, the scientists eagerly awaited 7 p.m. when the camera would begin recording. As soon as the clock struck 7, the camera started transmitting a live feed. Within seconds, the scientists screamed in surprise. What they saw was inexplicable. They immediately copied the footage and rushed to the police station. None of them had ever witnessed such a terrifying incident. The next day, Louise, Michael's stepmother, was at his house enjoying a glass of expensive wine. Suddenly, she heard sirens in the distance. Before she could react, a police van drove into her front yard. Nervously, she jumped to her feet and hurried to meet them. "Hello, officer," she greeted, forcing a smile even a child could see through. "We're here because of Miss Louise," one officer said. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" Louise replied nervously, her hands trembling as she quickly hid them behind her back. Even before the police could explain their presence, Louise began acting suspiciously. "What exactly do you want? Do you have a search warrant?" she demanded. She then ran to the door and spread her arms wide, blocking their entry even though they hadn't tried to enter. "I know my rights. There's nothing here," she screamed. What happened next shocked her to the core. The police informed her that she was a suspect in her stepson's death. At this, Louise's heart raced and she turned pale. The glass she was holding slipped from her hand and shattered into pieces. Realizing there was no point in lying, she decided to confess, hoping the truth would set her free. Louise admitted she never intended to kill Michael. All she wanted was the valuable artifacts he kept. She confessed to slipping sleeping pills into his coffee and searching the house for artifacts, but finding nothing. Returning to Michael's room, she tried to threaten him into revealing their location, but realized he was no longer breathing. Panicking, she forged documents about his heart condition and gave them to Sarah, who genuinely loved her half-brother. She then insisted on refusing an autopsy to cover her tracks. However, Sarah's decision to involve scientists exposed her crime. At that moment, Louise's nightmare intensified. The passenger door of the police car opened, and Michael stepped out, alive. Louise froze in shock, unable to move. The previous evening, the scientists were stunned to see Michael struggling to escape his coffin on the camera feed. The sleeping pills had worn off, and he woke in horror. They immediately informed the police, who dug up the coffin and rescued him. Michael revealed he had hidden the artifacts in a warehouse, suspecting his stepmother. Despite Louise's pleas for mercy, he pressed charges. She was sentenced to prison. Sarah, devastated by her mother's actions, apologized to Michael but could not forgive her.